Hey everyone, welcome and thank you for tuning in today. Whether you're watching this on Facebook or YouTube, appreciate you tuning in, just taking the time to listen to what I have to say. I think you'll really like today's video. So, just want to take a minute to introduce myself, my wife and I. I'm Garang Patel, my wife Jess Patel, and we're here in Central Pennsylvania. I've lived here for the past 27 years. My wife lived here for the past 15, 20 some years. So, we are local real estate investors. We both have full time jobs, but we also, we kind of want to have a legacy to pass to our kids. So we started buying rental properties almost 10 years ago. Now we have a very small portfolio because we also have full time jobs. I work full time, my works full time. So this is kind of started out as a side hustle for us, but it's kind of like it's taken on a life of its own. And there's some things we've learned, right? And so there's two big ways that we can help you. So the first one being that if you're looking to invest in real estate, if you kind of want to know the ins and outs, the operational side of thing, how to excel, so we can help you with that. And the one big way that we can help you is by actually keeping a really accurate track of your numbers. So good bookkeeping, just tracking where your money goes. So you have an idea of what's going on. So that's how we can help you. And the second big way is to help you get the message out there. So if you're watching this video right now, and you can judge for yourself if you think this is good quality, right? We're just using this as a medium to display our work, to show you what we can do. But so there's two parts of it. First one is you actually have to be able to do the work, know what you're talking about. The second one is how you say it. So the communication matters. So that's the other way. If you're a small business or an executive or a salaried employee, and you're kind of looking a way to differentiate yourself, get your word out in the marketplace to see how you can stand out from the competition, kind of maybe make yourself a little bit more immune by educating your customers. And if you want to do that via long form video, then we can definitely help you. So today's video, it's an exciting topic. It is exciting for me, and I think it will be exciting for you too. So we're going to be talking about how we sold one of our rental properties for almost $100,000 in profit, and $15,000 that was tax refund. So we sold the property for a profit and we got a big tax refund on top of it. So we kind of want to walk you through behind the scenes, show you everything, peel back the curtain, kind of let you take a look at how we did it so you can get an idea of how you can do this for yourself. So the quick big picture overview is that this was a 5-year buy and hold. Not like a fix and flip, not a burr or anything like that. So we're talking about a real life case study of a 5-year hold. This was a property that we bought in late summer of 2017, and then we sold it last year. So fall of 2017 to fall of last year, 2022. So 5-year hold. Purchased the property for $215,000, sold it for $300,000. Four big avenues of return in real estate. It's your mortgage pay down, property appreciation, tax benefits, and the cash on cash return. So we're going to go through that and we're going to show you all of that. So you can kind of take a look at the numbers. So the total out of pocket cash in 2017 was about $27,000. 10% of that was down payment, about $22,000. I had to do a few things to just kind of get it up to speed to rent. And so after that, it averaged about $6,200 worth of operating loss every year. So that's what it cost me cash out of pocket to keep the property running. Now you might say, okay, well, why did you, that's stupid. If it's bleeding you money, why would you run the property? And then I'm going to talk about that a little bit more later when I show you the behind the scenes of the bookkeeping and our tax returns. There's a reason you want to keep a property on hand if you can afford to swing for the little bit of the cash mismanagement. And the reason for that is if you're a high income earner, right? So if you're two income making good money, you're going to be in the top tax bracket. And what this will let you do is save on your income tax. And that kind of makes up for having to pay cash out of pocket. And you can accumulate all this paper loss and depreciation. And then when you go to sell it, then you pretty much get a break on your tax return. Right, so after that, it averaged about 6,200 in losses every year for 5 years. Right, so the total out of pocket cash was about $58,000. But the tax write off was worth at least $35,000. And then I got $100,000 back at closing between everything because of our what I call bookkeeping, tax keeping magic, right? If you know how the U.S. tax code is written in such a way that it favors rental property owners or real estate owners. So if you know how to use that to your advantage, and if you have a really good CPA that can kind of guide you through things, so that really makes things easy. So there's like I said, there's four sources of real estate returns. Returns when you buy a rental property. There is the cash on cash return. There's your property appreciation, there's your mortgage pay down, and then there's the tax benefit. So I'm going to talk about all of that. I'm also going to show you this one book that I really recommend. Some people might say it's a bit dated, but it's the one that helped me get started, and I think it will help you as well. Right, so when it's all said and done, we got about a $92,000 back, or about a 33% return on our money. Right. And so what happens, just hypothetically speaking, right? Albert Einstein has said that, he's alleged to have said that the most powerful force in the universe is compound interest. And not too many people really appreciate it. So let me ask you this. If you take $100,000 and if you grow it consistently at 33% for 10 years, so it's going to be worth about $1.7 million, right? And so if you keep growing that 100,000 for 20 years at 33%, it's going to be worth about $30 million. And if you can just squeeze out one more decade, like one extra decade, so that $100,000 compounded at 33% for 30 years, it's going to grow to an eye-watering, astonishingly high $520 million. Now, these are ballpark numbers, but you kind of get the idea. So, your number one job as somebody who's looking to invest is to be a good cash or asset allocator. You kind of want to allocate your capital wisely. I also wanted to announce a special offer where we specialize in working with real estate professionals in the central Pennsylvania area. Because we're natives of the area, we know the area so well. So, if you're a real estate investor and if you're looking for help with your bookkeeping, accounting, payroll, taxes, we can definitely help you out. So, the contact information should be on the screen and at the bottom in the description. So reach out to us. We'll be more than happy to help you out. So a little bit about me. I guess I came to America at the age of 15 in 1996. My uncle sponsored us and we came over, my mom, dad, and younger brother, and I've actually lived here in central Pennsylvania, actually Harrisburg, since 1996. This is the longest I've ever lived in one place. So, although technically not born and raised here, I was raised here. I consider myself a Pennsylvania native. I served for a few years in the service. I went to Penn State for my undergrad and grad school. And I was told about the value of compound interest early on. I had an interest in numbers, I liked business, marketing. So I did a double major for my undergrad in finance and marketing. And one of the things that I was taught early on was the value of compound interest. That basically, if you invest $1 today and you let that dollar grow, so not only does that dollar make money, but the money that the dollar made also keeps making money. So that's the essence. So I was really fascinated with that. And then, if you're a business major, you're exposed to accounting. And Warren Buffett, the famous investor, has said that the language of business is accounting, and that's what he prefers. And so one of the things I really got fascinated in accounting was at the time, I know this is before we started offshoring a lot of our jobs. So my accounting textbooks at the time, they were still about, 5, 10 years looking back. So the examples and case studies we practiced on had a lot of manufacturing. And one of the things we learned about, like fixed costs, variable costs, contribution margin, stuff like that. And this idea that I just got really fascinated with was the idea of fixed cost. I've always been fascinated with this idea of the fixed cost. And one time I remember I was in a Borders bookstore. This is before they filed for bankruptcy and the 2008 financial crisis and all that stuff. But it was a book by Ben Stein. He had a game show on Comedy Central. He's an economist. He used to be a commentator on TV. But I remember in the book, he said that he made the point that the way to get ahead in life is to try and get your fixed costs or drive them down to as close to zero as possible. And so I always had that in the back of my head. And it's one of the reasons I got into real estate is because I know there's a government program out there called the FHA. Now, if you're a veteran, you also have access to the VA loan, but I know that's not open to everybody, so I'm going to talk about the FHA. Now, what you can do is you can buy a property with 3.5% down. So that's how I bought my first rental property. And this is the magic of rental properties or real estate in the sense that I know the rule of thumb is that if you make 100, like let's just say the rule of thumb is that you can only borrow 3 or 4 times your salary for the house. But I remember when I bought my first property, I think it was 13.5 or 14 times my salary. And that's crazy, right? It's like a mind-boggling number. But I was able to do that because it was a 4-unit. Actually, it was a disguised 5-unit as a 4-unit, and we can talk about that some other time. But what happened is the rents from the other 3 units counted towards the purchase price. So, basically, I joked that the FHA is the elephant gun, and you kind of want to save that for an elephant, which is a 4-unit or a disguised 5-unit. And so, I knew that if I got my fixed costs down, the biggest recurring costs every month that I can't help, but I have to pay that no matter what, right? The 2 biggest ones are your house and your car. So I was not able to do anything about the car because I like to drive and I'm not going to ride a bicycle. But the house, I was able to. So it's to the point now where, I live in one and I rent out the other 3, and it's really nice because the extra money I'm able to spend on my family, if I want to go on a vacation, if I need to buy something, that there's never any issue of, hey, is there any money in the bank? And a big part of this is what kind of legacy do you want to leave for your kids? I knew that if I just left them a bunch of money, more likely than not, they might just spend it, waste it, and then just blow through it. But the one good thing about real estate is that it is a form of forced savings. So, if they know it's a lot like a farm, right? How do you have this 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th generation farmers that manage to hang on to like 40, 50, 60, 100 acres? And, it's because it's a form of forced savings. And so what happens with forced savings is your kids are kind of forced to manage or maintain the property. And if they want to continue extracting income from it or collecting rent from it. So I knew that was something I wanted to do. It would help me bring my family together, especially if I had boys. I knew I could teach them the trade, or even girls, how to maintain a property, how to negotiate with different contractors. And, it's a life skill more than just having like a piece of property. It teaches them a useful life skill. And the last big part, my inspiration, is my uncle, Kiran Patel. He's a big pillar of the Indian community. Now, I don't know too many good, solid stand-up people like him. He came over here. He sponsored my dad, my mom, and I. He helped us get settled. And he's also just a financial genius. I know him and his partners had a hotel partnership, and he's the one who convinced them to take their partnership public. And I think that was circa 1999, 2000. So at one point, the company that they founded and took public, Harsha Hospitality, it still trades on the New York Stock Exchange. At its peak, I believe the market cap was over $1 billion. They employ thousands of people in the central Pennsylvania area. He's really involved in charity, all kinds of good stuff for the community. And, he told me, he said, look, if you want to get ahead in life, focus on big real estate projects, like whether it be at nursing homes or retirement communities or hotels or, condominiums. And so I'm not there yet, but I'd start small, so rental properties. So this is a good example of what I want to show you. Okay, so next I want to go over the key takeaways from the property itself, give you a little bit of the background of the property itself, and then stress the importance of accurate records or good record keeping for maximizing profits. So in terms of the key takeaways, if you were to ask me how we did it, right? It was like a 5-year buy and holds. So it's almost like, think of it like a symphony or an orchestra playing where there's multiple people and they each have to do their part. Now, this was good for me because in this case, I got to play conductor, which is nice. You just got your little baton and wand and you're waving it around because I saw the property come on market and I immediately contacted Cindy, my realtor. She's the one who does a lot of the grunt work for me. And I said, she's a fantastic human being. I've known her for almost 15 years. And I can tell you that not a single property that I've owned, they bought, sold, that she was not involved in because I value her input that much. So it's really good to have somebody like that in your corner, right? So I saw the property come on the market. I knew it had been sitting for a while because, the seller kept dropping the price. So I knew he was open to negotiation, like willing to take an offer that I wanted to give him. And so I said, okay, Cindy, go ahead and put the offer in. And then Richard, my mortgage broker, he basically gave me the letter. He said, okay, like, good, you're approved. These are the terms. And so for my end, because of the good bookkeeping, good record keeping that my wife and I do, I crunched the numbers and I could see that, okay, this whole thing, this whole circle was going to complete beautifully. What happens is when you have something like this in place, it lets you move with speed and accuracy because everyone does their part and it's like a well-oiled machine. So I highly recommend having a team approach. It just makes things so much easier. So, right, bought it for $215,000, 5-year hold. Now, of course, things have gone crazy since 2017. So the numbers are a little bit skewed. They're backward looking, but the principle still holds. It was a 5-year hold. One thing I would say is that never go in without a cash buffer because anything with that Murphy's Law, anything that can go wrong usually does go wrong. And in my experience, it goes wrong at the most inopportune, awkward moments. So like 2 weeks before Christmas, I had the boiler go out. Well, it didn't go out, but the technician who came to service the boiler said, hey, this is on its last leg. You should do something about it. Change it, So I was like, okay. I could have let it go, but I had good tenants, so I wanted to take care of them. So, but that's $10,000 that you shouldn't or could have been spent somewhere else on better things. So never go in without a cash reserve because with real estate, it's a very demanding type of business. Usually things will go wrong and if you can't go there to fix it yourself, you're going to need somebody to come in and do it on the spot. So always have a war chest on hand. And I can't stress this enough, the importance of just having good records like doing a shameless plug here, we're offering bookkeeping services for real estate investors, but I think it really helped us sleep better at night. That phrase that conservative investors sleep better at night. I think it's because we knew to the last penny where our money was going. And so on paper, it looked like we were bleeding cash, right? 6, 7, some years, $8,000 every year. But we knew that we had it mapped out, right? Because my background, my training, I know how to calculate the net present value, the IRR. So I had the cash flows projected out to 5, 10, 15, 20, and 30 years. So I had different scenarios. And I had the terminal cash flows. So I knew that I was making good return on my money, about 33%. So looks can be deceiving. On the surface, it can look like you're not doing so good. But if you have good records, then you can have confidence, you can sleep better at night, etc., etc. Now, 2 pieces of software I would highly recommend that you familiarize yourself with. If you don't want to hire somebody, you can do this yourself. You don't have to hire somebody. You just got to learn the software. So the first one is QuickBooks. It's the industry standard. So there's no way around this. You're just going to have to learn it. The second one is, it's a little bit of a single entry bookkeeping type system. I've been using this personally since 1999, 2000. I mean, they don't even make it anymore, but you can buy it on eBay for $30, $40. It's called Microsoft Money. It's excellent. It still works. I'm keeping fingers crossed that it keeps working. In terms of the property itself, give you a little bit of a backstory. Back in graduate school, I was having trouble really understanding the Black-Scholes option pricing model on a deep level. So I went to my professor and I asked him, I was like, hey, Dr. Brew, I'm struggling with this. What should I do? And what can I do to really understand this on a deep level? He said, Grang, you just have to know that one thing, that options by their nature have value. So anytime you have an option that is the right to do something, but not the obligation, that has value because, again, it's an option. You can choose to do something, but you don't have to. And so that kind of like, the light bulb went off and everything since then kind of became easy to understand. So I knew that this was good because I was getting a 3-story all brick in the middle of Hershey. So if you think in terms of real estate, right, what are the three key determinants? It's like the first one's what everyone knows. It's location, location, location. But the second one is condition. The third one is price. And so I knew that for all of these, I was basically checking off all the boxes. It was a beautifully maintained all brick house in the heart of downtown Hershey. It was 3 stories, 4 bedrooms, 2.5 baths, a jacuzzi. It even had a 2-car garage and then an extra off-street parking spot. So the roof was in good condition. I had an inspection done when I bought it, so everything was good. And I knew on top of that, I was getting a free option. And so this is what really interested me, was that somebody was paying me a 33% return on my money to have this 5-year option where I had the right but not the obligation to do something. And what was this option that I wanted? Well, which was that at the time, my wife and I mean, my girlfriend at the time, we had just gotten engaged. We were talking about having a family, starting a family. And we knew that we wanted to, the first priority was make sure where can we send our kids when they're of age to a good school. So we wanted to know where we could send our kids that had good public schools. And then again and again, I did my research, and Hershey, there was only 2 that came through over and over again. And so it's Cumberland Valley and Hershey. And this is not just me saying this. This was U.S. News and World Report. So they rank all public high schools nationally, right? So obviously, if you look at the list, the top ones are going to be Thomas Jefferson, Stuyvesant, stuff like that. But and then in Pennsylvania, there's a couple of schools around Philadelphia area that are rated very highly. But when I looked, Hershey was like almost in the 95th percentile, 92nd, something like that. It was a crazy high number, and this was nationally. So I knew that if my wife and I were not able to build our dream house somewhere in Palmyra, right, like 10, 20 acres, beautiful farmhouse, a working farm, that kind of thing, we were going to have this option, the right, but not the obligation, to send our kids to one of the best rated public schools in the country. And to boot, I was getting an option in terms of like somebody was paying me money to do this. So these are the kind of deals you want to look for. And so again, shameless plug, not to toot our horn, but I don't think we could have done this if we didn't have good records in place. It's so important that I actually made sure I had a good system in place before I did anything, just because I knew I did not want to be flying blind. If you ever had any interest or learned anything about flying, you know that if you want to get your pilot's license, sooner or later you have to get what's known as instrument rated, which means you can fly blind. Well, not blind, but if there's bad weather, storm, whatever, you can fly without actually being able to see anything. And this is what I compare good record keeping to, which is like if you don't have good records, you're just flying blind, and you don't want to incur the wrath or the ire of the IRS or any regulatory agencies, right? We know notoriously that small business owners and real estate owners, etc., were like the prime target. I mean, what's the number one risk factor for getting audited? Like, have a successful small business, and boom, you're on the list. So, yep, bought the property with 10% down, 215,000. Now, in terms of profit maximization, I just have like a few things I can share with you. The most important one being that this is not a BRRRR, right? So like the BRRRR, the buy, rehab, rent, refinance, repeat. This was not that. This was just a strictly buy and hold. And it's because both my wife and I were full-time W-2 wage earners, so we just don't have the time or the energy, especially once you have kids, 2 dogs, you're not going to have time. Trust me. So this was a 5-year buy and hold. And so I knew it was a different play, right? I was not doing an intensive renovation or anything like that. My number one goal is to have good tenants in there that kept my 33% return on the back end up. So it might look like, okay, I'm sacrificing a little bit of rent. I'm not, doing this or that. But you have to realize the most important thing with rental properties is your biggest expense is vacancy. You do not want to keep it vacant. And one of the best ways that I've found to get really qualified applicants is doing this. So what you do is you go to Zillow Rentals or any of these other apps that will give you listings. So what you do is you put in your specs, the specs for your property. So if it's like a 4-bedroom, 2.5 bath, 2-car garage, you put that in. You look for comps. So you're going to look for, I would say, get at least 10 or 12 numbers, make a list, take the average, and then just drop it down by $50 or $100. Typically, it'll come out to about 10% or so. Well, what that does is, like think it through from the other person's point of view. The ideal tenant would be what? Somebody who has a good job, stable employment history, good job, and also has a good FICO score. So I'm telling you from personal experience, people like that have a good FICO score, they're also good with their money. And they like to look for deals. And they're shrewd and they're smart. So if you try and pull one over on them, it's not going to work. What works best is the honesty and straightforwardness approach. So just give them a good deal. Give them like $50, $100 discount. And you're going to have a lot of qualified applicants. Be nice. And, that should like keep your property occupied most of the time. So that's the number one technique. Other thing is, I would say in between vacancies, move outs, spend the money, get the paint freshened up. If you have to change the carpet, do it, but definitely steam clean it. Just, it's really important to have the property look nice. And this goes double for something on the outside. So the curb appeal, this is what I learned from Cindy. Curb appeal is very, very important. So, and this is real estate's one of those things where if you do it long enough, you're going to meet people naturally, organically. And one such person that I met was Ruben. He's my landscaping guy. He's such a great guy. Anytime I need something, he comes through in a pinch. And so before I was getting ready to list this house, I said, okay, I want maximum curb appeal on a budget. And I said, Ruben, can we do this? And he's like, yep, I do it for you. And he did such a beautiful job that I think I listed it for rent about a year before I sold it. But my last time that I listed it, I remember getting 40 or 50 qualified applicants. And, this was in the middle of the COVID pandemic, so it might have skewed the numbers a little bit, but that is my number one tip. Keep the vacancy low, give a discount if you have to, right? Keep the curb appeal really top notch as much as you can. One of the best ways to maximize profit on a rental property, if you are a dual income high earner household, is just to like accumulate paper losses through depreciation, mileage, meals and entertainment, that kind of thing. And then when you're ready to sell it, what happens is all that loss that's been accumulated, you can just write that off against the gain, right? Just like say in my example, you buy a property for $215, you sell it for $300, the mortgage is paid down. So at closing, you're getting a check for $100,000, but you have to pay tax on that gain. And if you have accumulated losses, then you can write that off. So that's a big benefit. So in terms of profit maximization, that was the number one goal that we had, that we were just going to, from the get-go, we were going to try and, because we knew we could swing the yearly losses, right? This is like about $6,000, $7,000 it was costing us, but we knew that we could swing that. So, that's fine, because when we go to sell it, then you can write off the depreciation. So since we are talking about tax benefits, I should mention that I don't think I can emphasize this enough, that basically in this case, in our case, accurate bookkeeping is what led us to this big $100,000 windfall. I don't think if we had good records, we would have felt so confident, right? Because anytime you're running a small business operation, be it like rental properties or your own side hustle or a small business, you kind of want to stay clear of the IRS, especially like, right, those are the number one reasons to get audited is if you if you have your own small business. So, I think having good records, especially digitized records, one thing I recommend everyone do is just get a good scanner and start scanning your receipts and just digitize them, because then if anytime there's an audit, you don't have to dig through everything. You can basically just to the IRS agents be like, okay, here I'm giving you access to my Google Drive and have at it. And so I think, and I mentioned this earlier, right? It's kind of feels like if you're learning to fly, like getting your pilot's license, then it's almost like getting instrument rated. So having good records is just indispensable. I don't think we would have felt confident going through with the sale and claiming the deductions that we did if we knew for a fact that we couldn't back them up. So, if you have a good bookkeeping system, then it just becomes a simple plug and chug. I know my CPA, he's one of the top guns in the area. I think he testifies on behalf of corporations and government agencies in as far as in a forensic accountant capacity. And he's teamed up with a couple of the best tax CPAs in the area, and they actually formed the North American Forensic Accounting Association. So he's pretty knowledgeable. And so what I did is just this was a little bit of a complex return, right? Because we had 5 years of accumulated losses, and I wanted to make sure I was close. So it's kind of like doing a math problem. You want to make sure you can check your work. So I did the return on my own, and then I took it to him, and then we were within $200. So I mean that made me feel good that like I was onto something. So a big part of this is with rental properties with real estate. What you can do is you have non-cash expenses such as meals and entertainment, mileage, depreciation. I mean, you have to recapture that when you go to sell your property, but that's a whole nother issue. But if you any kind of property improvements like a capital expense, like if you put a new roof, new furnace, you have to depreciate that over the useful life, but it's still a write-off, so you're getting a tax break. So again, just to recap, total out of pocket when we first purchased the property was about $27,000. After that, it averaged roughly 6,000, 6,500 every year. So for 5 years, and it was operating, from an operating standpoint, it was a loss because we're paying money out of pocket. But the thing is, it benefited us in the end because we knew there was a tax write-off to be had, and then at least if there was a 5-year hold, we were going to make some money on it, right? And again, this is all thanks to just having a good system. In a little bit, I'm going to give you a behind the scenes peek so you can see what I'm talking about. So all said, total out of pocket was about $58,000 to basically run this house for 5 years. But at closing, we got a check for $100,000 because we had paid the mortgage off. And then on top of that, the depreciation, unclaimed losses, they approximately added up to $100,000. And the tax write-off on that one was worth about $30,000, like $35,000. So yeah, we got $100,000 back at closing because we had paid the mortgage off a little bit. Now, in terms of the sales process itself, it was when it came time to sell, I have a little bit of familiarity with Microsoft Excel. So what I did was I just created a spreadsheet, and I was fielding offers from about 5 cash buyers. And then I also talked to Cindy, my realtor. I mean, she's a great person. She's been with me for about 10, 15 years now. And anytime I have a question, I don't do anything real estate related without talking to her or my mortgage broker, Richard. And, like I asked her, I was like, hey, you have this encyclopedic knowledge of this area. Do you have almost like a database that can rival any chat GPT out there when it comes to this local market, right? So can you tell me what the range is going to be? What do you think we could list it for on the low end, on the high end, and what's the most probable outcome? So she gave me that. And based on that, I ran some numbers. And what I was most interested in was getting to what my net take home was going to be after taxes, after everything. And so obviously she said that to get the best price, listing it via like what they call MLS, Realtor.com, Zillow, that kind of thing, you have to spend a little bit more money to fix up the house. So you have to kind of spruce it up. So that means new carpet, new paint, maybe landscaping, maybe, like if any of the mechanicals need fixing. So stuff like that. Whereas I knew if I went with a cash buyer, like, because at the time the market was hot and the real estate rates were still low. I mean, it had started to cool off. I could see what was coming around the horizon. But, there's people that maybe know more than me, that are a little bit more confident than me. And I was like, okay, so there's people, and it's a great location in the middle of Hershey. Beautiful, 2-story, 3-story, all brick, 4 bedrooms, 2.5 baths. It's got a 2-car garage. So, there's a lot of people who would just love to flip it and make a big buck, make a tidy profit on it. And so I was like, okay, what are we going to do? So I laid it all out. I said, okay, let's do an apples to apples comparison, right? I was just interested in my net take home pay, what that was going to be. And so I got different offers. And so I just did like a probability analysis. I said, okay, I know I'm going to get a little bit more listing with Cindy, my realtor. And, but it has to be a probability or believability weighted decision. So you have to ask yourself, okay, well, I'm going to pay so much more in terms of fixing up the house. There's also a chance that it might not sell for this price, whereas the cash buyer was like, okay, here's the cash. So it's like, okay, this is where having a super accurate record keeping system just really helped us. It's almost like a 1-2 punch. I mean, we're QuickBooks certified, but we also just have our own Microsoft Money that we use for single entry bookkeeping. It's a lot faster. It's almost like the difference between Notepad and Microsoft Word. And so, okay, so we have that. And then when you combine that with Microsoft Excel, you can just do a lot of analysis on the spot. In terms of if we're looking at a property, everything just becomes a simple plug and chug. That's it. We're like, okay, this is the bottom line, yay or nay. So we ended up selling to Neil Yan. He's a professor of law at Villanova. He does adjunct, and he's also a partner at a JSDC in downtown Hershey. And he knows what he's doing. He's worth a lot of money. So he was going to fix and flip it. And so more power to him. So I was just like, okay, have at it. So in terms of talking about the results, right? So we got 2 checks at closing. Well, 1 check at closing, but it totaled $100,000 because there was a $10,000 deposit that the seller gave us. And then it's almost 90,200 and something that we got at closing because the mortgage had been paid down. Now, you have to balance that against what it cost us to run the property for a few years, right? 5 years. So it was almost like, so, okay, so let's just round these numbers up. So I'm going to say got 100 at closing. We were out about 55, 58 over the 5 years, but then we got $100,000 worth of tax write-off. And that was worth about $35,000. So, 60, 100 minus 60 is 40, plus 35, 75, and then about 15 and change in the tax return. So pretty good. Now, as a joke, I set a goal for myself. I said, okay, it's nice, this big check, payday, walk away, whatever, but I also don't want to have to pay any tax on it. Can we do it? And I had been kind of talking with my tax strategist, my CPA, about it. And my background's in finance, so I know a little bit of marketing, accounting, that kind of thing. So I kind of knew what was available in terms of write-offs. So the big thing about how that $15,000 refund came about was because of basically accumulated losses, unclaimed losses. Now, when you have other properties, what you can do is you'll just have losses, unless you're a full-time real estate investor, in which case you can write off all your losses every year. But if you're not, like if my wife and I were 2 full-time W-2 wage earners, so if you don't, then you kind of cap to how much you can take off. But they don't disappear. When it comes time to sell the property, you can utilize that. And so rather than just tell you about it, let me show you. I'm going to do a quick behind the scenes Loom video. I'm going to walk you through exactly what I'm talking about. And before we get into the Loom video, one just extra point I want to make is something I learned back in my finance class. Actually, it was Professor Boo at Penn State who taught me the value of an option. He said, one day I was in his derivatives class and I was struggling with the Black-Scholes formula. So I went to talk to him, just to kind of I wanted to grok it at a deep level. I said, "Hey, Dr. Boo, this doesn't make sense." And he's just like, "Grant, you have to understand that its core, an option, because of its very nature, is inherently valuable." So, so I was thinking, okay, that makes sense because it gives you the right, but not the obligation to either buy or sell at a predetermined price into the future. And, finance 101, investing 101, time value of money. And so, of course, when it expires, the option is going to be either in the money or out of the money. It can also be at the money. So it'll either expire worthless or worth a lot of money if you play your cards right. So in terms of thinking through this from a non-monetary optionality, what I wanted was just to have really good, because at the time my wife and I, we had not had any kids yet, but we wanted to plan for our future and we wanted to try and give our kids the best possible leg up. So we said, okay, I started researching. I said the best schools in the area, there were probably like two or three. There was Cumberland Valley, Camp Hill, and Hershey. And this was rated by US News and World Report. So like this is nationwide. I think the Hershey schools were either in the 85th or 95th percentile. Some just really high number. So I was like, okay, what if, say down the road, we're going to try and build our dream home somewhere, like 10 acres, farm, master barn, stone brick house, all that stuff. But if you can't do it, and you want to send your kids to a good school, what do you do? Okay, so I wanted to have a foothold in Hershey just because of the schools. And so I was like, okay, it's going to cost me a little bit of money, but when I go to sell it, it'll be a plus, and then somebody else is paying my mortgage, right? So that's kind of like getting a free option. So that's why I did it. So it was a big house in the heart of downtown Hershey. It was all brick, 3 stories. It's got like 4 bedrooms, 2.5 baths. It's got a jacuzzi in it. It's got a 2-car garage, good neighbors, safe neighborhood. Walkability is really high. If you're sitting on the front porch, you can see people walking their kids and dogs to the park. The school was literally like a 5-minute walk. The tennis courts were right there. So, I knew if nothing else, I would. So here's the other thing. I have never bought a property that I personally would not want to live in myself. So I'm more of a quality over quantity kind of guy. I'm not going to be a slumlord. So, I do less, but I like to do good deals. So this was this was an optionality for me. Anyway, so sorry for the sidebar, but let me give you a peek behind the scenes in terms of my accounting system, bookkeeping system, and show you how that really led to this profit. And so I just wanted to take a minute to introduce our bookkeeping services. They're geared specifically for real estate investors, especially here in the central Pennsylvania area. And the reason I say that is because my wife and I, we both manage and own and run our own rentals. So there's no third party. We tried that once and it was a disaster. Also, I talked to my CPA and he said that none of his other clients that own rental properties, unless they do it themselves, they don't make any money. So it's very hard because there's what economists call the principal agent problem. And, we can go in a little bit more detail in another video. But the bottom line is that because we manage and own our own rentals, we know what the needs of the property owner slash landlord is, right? It'd be anything from like getting a bad tenant out, making sure you have a really good lawyer on hand to help you draft a lease so there's no issues on the back end. Like, because 9 times out of 10, if you need to evict somebody, it's going to go to the MDJ. And more often than not, they're going to be favorable towards the tenant. So you need something in place that's going to be ironclad. And I have a really good attorney that I can put you in touch with. There's just a network that we can help you tap to ease a lot of your burden. And the most important one being just having good records. This is what we do, this is what we specialize in, so we can definitely help you with this. And we're natives to this area. I've lived here for 27 years. My wife's lived here for 15 years. So this is the longest I've ever lived in any one place. I remember it was July 10th, 1996, when we landed at JFK, my mom, dad, younger brother, and I. And my uncle was the one who sponsored us, and he still lives in the area. So we just settled here and pretty much called this place home ever since. I think this is the longest I've ever lived in one place. So went to high school here, did a few years in the service. I went to Penn State both for undergrad and grad school. So, I have roots in the area. I wasn't born here, but I consider myself a native, a central Pennsylvania native. So, and there's also an additional network that we can help you tap. So if you have aspirations to go lateral or higher up, so like say if you want to diversify into farmland or hotels or nursing homes or high-end condominiums or anything like that. Just a really good asset that we can help put you in touch with is just my uncle, Kiran Patel. He was the mastermind behind taking their partnership, Harsha Hospitality, public. The ticker symbol is HT, and it trades on the New York Stock Exchange. Now, when he was at the helm, he was really instrumental in growing the company. The market cap when he was around, when he was the CFO, was almost over $1 billion. So he's left to go do his own thing. He does solo stuff now, and so the company suffered a little bit, but he's done well for himself. He took on basically an abandoned historic building in Inner Harbor, Baltimore, turned it into a high-end hotel at the edge of Hershey. He bought a couple of row homes, tore them down, and put a Best Western there. So, it's added to the tax base of the town. It's a 50, 60 room hotel, brand new, really great reviews on Google and TripAdvisor. So, another uncle has expertise in farmland. So, there's a lot of family and institutional and network knowledge that we can make available to you if that's something that you'd have interest in. And so again, not to toot our own horn, but I think the one big way that our services can help you is by accuracy and time savings. Because if you don't have good records, you're essentially just flying blind. So we're well versed in tax compliance, financial regulations. So we make sure we can, by doing it right the first time, we can save you costly errors down the road. Another way we can help you is by expense tracking, kind of having a dashboard on hand. You get like whatever your choice is. If you want quarterly reports or monthly or biannually, we can streamline the decision-making process for you, because then you don't have to, you can just basically hit a button or give us a call and we can help you out. And so what happens is if you have accurate records, you can allocate your most effective or precious resource, cash, in the most efficient way, right? So Warren Buffett has said that the most important job of a CEO is to be a risk manager. And what better way to manage risk than to just allocate your capital in the most efficient way possible. So that's a big, I think that would be a big add-on that can help you grow your portfolio. Again, we touched a little bit on this earlier. Another one is tax optimization. We know what the last allowable deduction is on anything, so we can help you there. Another big one is legal protection. If you have an LLC and if you don't keep separate and accurate records, there is a legal theory known as piercing of the corporate veil. And I mean, it's hard to do, but it can be done. So, you kind of want to set yourself up so you just have a strong castle with a big moat right from the get-go. Another thing to keep in mind is if we can do this for you, well, more than likely what it will give you is peace of mind and scalability, and also enhance your property valuation. If you're going to a lender or a potential investor, and if you have good records that look clean, that look like they were done by a professional, they're more likely than not, they're going to be willing to invest with you or give you money at favorable terms. So, this can kind of be a good way to differentiate yourself from, because hard money lenders, right? They kind of like, they have to protect their money. So they're going to put the most onerous terms on you. And if you have a bargaining chip that gives you the upper hand, so it would be a win for you. And then the last two I would say would be cost efficiency. It's a lot cheaper to hire us by the hour than it is to hire a full-time CFO or an in-house accountant. And the second one is it's a long-term strategy. So it's kind of like you don't want to be penny wise and pound foolish. If you don't have a team in place, you're not going to be able to scale appropriately. But this can be a good way for you to have just a long-term strategy where you have your specialized operators and you're just a conductor. You're the rock star that just shows up, plays the music, and goes home, and everybody else does the work. So this could be a good way if you want to scale fast, that a good bookkeeper can help you. So again, the contact information is on the screen, but please feel free to reach out. Email is patelcoachingllc@gmail.com, and the phone number is on the screen. So I guess to wrap things up, what I would like to do is leave you with a couple of useful practical tips and also give you like a high level 30,000 foot lessons learned. So I want you to have some good resources that you can put to use today. Even if you don't hire us or use our services, these are free resources that you'll be able to put to use today. So the first one is, I would just say, start digitizing all records, receipts, bank statements. Nowadays they're digitized PDFs, but receipts are a big one. Any checks you write, any personal correspondences for business, etc., etc. The reason I say that is because the rate at which AI is progressing, two particular subfields like natural language processing and image recognition, and especially what happens with these algorithms, they get trained and tuned on these large data sets, is that beyond a certain threshold, they go through what's known as a phase transition. So you think of it like, beyond boiling point or freezing point where like water turns to ice. It's something like that. So you kind of want your own in-house company database that you're going to be able to put the AI to use on. So pretty soon, this AI is going to be more or less like a digital coach, your little business consultant that's going to help you find ways to increase revenues or cut costs. But, it's like, as Sherlock Holmes would say, data, 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 I cannot make bricks without clay. Remember in the first Sherlock Holmes movie? So you kind of want to have, you want to prepare for like this revolutionary technology that's still in the early stages. So digitize everything. One really good piece of hardware I recommend is the Brother MFD, the one that I have. It's black and white, laser, doesn't really cost that much. It's not color, so that's one drawback, but it's worked really well for me. I just scan everything, turn it into PDFs, and I know it's coming soon when I'm going to be able to just basically have a $4,000 or $5,000 rig, something that people used to use for Bitcoin mining, that I'm going to be able to train my personal data on it. It's going to give me fabulous insights that will help me kind of get a leg up over the competition. So that's another one. One good book that I really recommend is called The Unofficial Guide to Real Estate Investing. It's a little bit old. It's about 20 years old, but the key point that I took away from it was the 4 sources of real estate returns. Another one was operations, finance. So, real estate is a lot like skilled labor. It's a lot more about doing. I would say it's about 2/3, 1/3. 1/3 about knowing the theory, 2/3 about actually getting your time in, right? It's like a union. You just have to put your time in. You have to learn by doing. And so you don't need a lot to get you started. You just need to save up a little bit of money, find the courage and pull the trigger and house hack your way to your first property. So, but that's a really good resource to have. 2 pieces of software that I highly, highly recommend is, one is QuickBooks, which is the de facto industry standard. So you kind of need to know that if you're going to scale to any level at all. And the second one that's my personal favorite is Microsoft Money. I've used that since 1998, 99. They don't make it anymore. You can buy it on eBay. It's like 20, 30 bucks, and you just install it, and it's kind of like having your own bookkeeping assistant in-house. I mean, you have to do the work, but it's a really good resource. The other big thing I want to leave you with is lessons learned, right? There's a couple of things that top of mind I keep. Some hard lessons learned from like 10 years doing this. The first one is, single family homes were like the golden goose. You didn't really have to do the buy, fix, flip, or burr with those. You could just buy a single family home, rent it out, and it turned out that you'd have a lot less headaches and they were a better source of cash flow, but that's not the case. Now it's 2 bedrooms. And that ties into what I want to tell you about is what I call the elephant gun, the FHA or VA loan, where it's like 3.5% or 0% down, and you can buy your first property. And what you can do is buy up to a 4 unit or a disguised 5 unit like I did. So, you kind of want to save the elephant gun for the 2 units, right? Or the 2 bedroom. So you kind of mix those two together. So use your FHA to buy a 4 unit, but make sure it's got as many 2 bedrooms as you can get away with. I would say getting at least 3 properties under your belt is really good before moving on to bigger and better things like farms, hotels, condominiums, maybe senior housing, that kind of thing. It's like building a big castle. It's got a lot of stones and bricks in it. You kind of want to get your time in. It's almost like, think of it like putting your time in the simulator before you get your pilot's license. And to give you a real life example of this, now my wife and I, what we do is we just follow this strategy called the DDD, or the 3D, data driven decisions. And what that has let us do is basically just say no to a lot of things. A lot of garbage we just turn away. But the thing is, we also focus on building relationships. So you can think of it like you want to have your network strong. You're networking with your realtors, your bankers, your mortgage brokers, people who do fix and flips, wholesalers, that kind of thing. Although we don't really dabble that much in wholesaling. So to give you a perfect real life example, we bought a 2 unit in the Pakistan area of Harrisburg, and that property just kind of fell in our lap. Our realtor brought the deal to us. We got it for, I would say today it's worth at least $300,000, if not more. But we got it for $175 just because our realtor was able to talk to her boss, who knew that this lady who was getting old, she was moving into a 55 plus community. She just wanted to sell it, and it was a fantastic property. It needed a little bit of TLC, but it just kind of fell in our lap. So, tend to your network, keep your realtors, your bankers happy, do right by them. This Hershey house that I sold, it was a cash deal, but I still gave Cindy a percentage of the sale price, even though she was not involved. I want her to know that she's a valuable asset. And another point related to that is that real estate is a good form of forced savings, right? You kind of want to build up your savings muscles. If the rule of money is that if there's a pile, it's going to get spent. So just have it allocated to some good use. And real estate is a really good way of forcing yourself to save. Not just for today, but also for the future. And finally, I would say having good records is a really good way to stay off IRS's radar. You don't want to get audited. Small business owners, real estate owners, they're the top target of audits. And we know that there's a lot of noise and news about beefing up the IRS and they going after basically middle to high middle income earners, right? And again, just having good records is also a good way to help you scale without any hiccups. You can just kind of, like I said, you're the rock star. You just show up, play the guitar, and go home, and your team does the work. Thank you so much for watching. Our contact information is on the screen. We're on social media. Our email, patalcoachingllc@gmail.com, or you can also give us a call. The phone number is on the screen. So thank you very much for watching, and talk to you soon. Bye.